Can you believe that you can make this with just a little hook? Fascinating! Hey there, and welcome back to Totally Fierce Crochet and Knooking. And before we dive into the magical world of Knooking Fair Isle, let me just tell you how thankful I am for the huge response to my previous video, the grandmother's favorite dishcloth. And I have to say, Knooking has always surprised me whenever I posted anything about Knooking. It's always fascinating for everyone else to see that you can do such awesome pieces that not only look knitted, they feel knitted, they actually are knitted with just a Knooking hook. And this video even goes a little step further. Last week we had something for absolute Knooking beginners or knitting beginners, and this week we are definitely amping it up by introducing Fair Isle Knooking, which is also why this video turned out a little bit longer, but I wanted to explain it to you more in detail how Fair Isle Knooking works. But I can tell you already, it's easier than you might think. Of course, Fair Isle knitting is something super popular. We all love the different Fair Isle patterns that there are, and you can pretty much do whatever pattern you like. And this includes also Knooking. You can definitely make every Fair Isle knitting pattern with Knooking, and all you need to know to do it, you will find in this tutorial. Over the past few weeks, I watched hundreds of knitting videos about Fair Isle, about Jogless stripes, about catching floats, all these things that are pretty much part of the Fair Isle knitting world. And of course, I translated everything to Knooking and found ways to do it. Because, do you see any jog in this design? Or check the inside. You have the floats, but they are all caught and connected. Overall, this was a super fun process to get to know how to translate Fair Isle knitting into Knooking. And for that, I will also give you these two patterns all for free. You will find them in the video. And let me tell you, there are so many things to learn in this video. It's packed with tips and tricks, from jogless joins to catching floats, from stockinette to 1x1 ribbings, and also how to knook in the round, which was a little request after the last video. So make sure to check out the chapters of the video if you're interested in just specific parts, so you don't have to watch the entire thing. But I will show you the process of how to make such a beautiful cowl from start to finish, and then give you a quick rundown on how I made the hat, so you can do it if you want to, which of course would be pretty nice for Valentine's Day. So when you're a total beginner, this might be a little bit overwhelming for you, but you can of course always come back. If you are new to Knooking and you want to learn it, make sure to check out my Knooking 101 playlist on my channel, where I show you from cast on to different stitches like garter and stockinette, up to bind off, cast off, all these kinds of things. You will find them in little individual videos, so you can learn Knooking step by step. And of course, feel free to join the larger projects like this one when you're ready. So are you ready to continue the Knooking journey with a little bit of Fair Isle? Let's go! So before we start the tutorial for the cowl, I will give you a quick rundown of how I made the hat with the hat pattern. The pattern I'm going to put up here, so you can make a screenshot if you want to use it for your own project. Of course, you can do the exact same cowl with the exact same dimensions using the heart pattern. This is completely up to you. As you always know, I keep it super flexible, so you can do it like you want to do it. And also in terms of sizing, make sure to just pick a size that you like. For the width of my hat, I basically made a chain and then put it around my hat where normally the hat would sit, so above the ears. And then I counted the chains and I had 56, so I kept the main part 56, which is of course a multiple of 8 because you have to have a multiple of 8 for the pattern. If you end up with, I don't know, 54 or 52, then always go up and down the shortest way to do so. For the brim, I increased the stitch count by 2 times 8 stitches, so 8 for each of the individual pattern segments. So my starting stitch count was 56 plus 16, so 72. And for the brim, I used the 5mm knooking hook, so that in the end you get like this super clean and super crisp and super stretchy brim or 1x1 ribbing. And then after that I changed to the 8mm hook to create the pattern. And as you can see, the pattern shows like the first 2 rows of the hearts, and then I just started the third with how I made the beginning. And then at some point where there was like just 1 stitch left here in the middle, I just started decreasing, and the decreases were quite easy. They were always like in each round I decreased by 1 until in the end I only had like, I don't know, 8 stitches left or something like this. And then I just put them together, sewed everything together and put it to the inside to hide it. And this is how I made the beautiful hat. So in case you want to make yourself a super cute hat for Valentine's Day. But now let me show you how to make the beautiful cowl. I'm super obsessed with it. I wish I would have more yarn like this, because I might even try to make myself a vest with this pattern. I think it's absolutely pretty. This is so me. The colors, the pattern, everything. I think it's absolutely beautiful and amazing. And now I will show you how to make it. And here are the materials that I chose to make my cowl with. The yarn is a chunky yarn. It's from Penguin, a French brand. And they say we would need 6mm hooks or knitting needles. And I'm going to use those 3 together, the white, the normal blue, and the dark blue. For the hook, I'm going to use 2 different hook sizes. A smaller hook size, a 5mm for the bottom and the top brim of my work, mainly because I think that the ribbing looks a bit neater and nicer with a smaller hook. So I'm going to use a smaller one. And then later on for the main part with the stockinette and the fair eye pattern, I'm going to use the 6mm knooking hook. Then, of course, the pair of scissors and the yarn needle. So as I mentioned, we are going to start with the smaller knooking hook, and I already have my helper yarn attached to it. And I will start with this darker blue yarn. And as a cast on method, I chose the half I-cord cast on. And for that, you can wrap the yarn around your neck about 2 to 3 times. So you have a bit of an amount of yarn that you can put to the side for the I-cord. And then we start with a slip knot as always. And now we start by casting on 84 stitches. So we take the yarn from the side and wrap it over the hook from the front, and then we take the yarn that goes to your yarn ball, or in my case my mess of yarn from the yarn baby I pulled out, and then pull that last loop through the second loop on your hook. And now we have 2. Then again the yarn from the side from the front and the yarn to your yarn ball, and then take this last loop, just 1 loop through basically like a slip stitch. And like this, we continue until we have the 84 loops on our hook. Here we go. 84 stitches are now on my hook and my helper yarn. It looks a little bit tight, which is absolutely normal. We are now going to slide all those loops onto our helper yarn. And now we can drag it out a little bit to see all those stitches a little bit better. Because now we continue by starting our ribbing and also starting working in the round. So once you have turned your work, we are now going along so that it is not twisted, and take our beginning side, which will be right here. So now you have both of the sides together. Now make sure that your working yarn is in the back so you can get it easily. Then we grab the very first stitch. Make sure to just hold both of the sides or the end pieces a little bit close together. And then we start with a knit stitch, so yarn over and pull it through. Then we take the yarn to the front, make a purl stitch, and for the purl stitch you go from the side into the loop, twist your hook, yarn under, and pull it through. Then again, the yarn to the back, and in the next stitch we make a knit stitch, so grab the stitch, yarn over, pull it through. And then again we alternate yarn to the front, purl stitch, yarn under, pull it through, yarn to the back, knit stitch, and after that purl stitch all along until we are at the end of the round. And this is basically then also our very first round of the ribbing. And in the end we will make 5 of those rounds, but I will be back once I'm finished with the first round. And now I made it through. We can now drag on the helper yarn that's right under your last stitch and pull it out. This can be super tight, so just drag on it step by step to get it out. Here we go. Then transfer your work on the helper yarn. Pull everything a bit more loose so we can also see the beginning and the end a bit better. This start of the project is always the most fiddly part, and now we can continue. Make sure that it is not twisted, and don't worry if you have like this little gap or loop here in between. Usually this will remove itself once we continued with the rounds. And as I mentioned before, we will do 5 rounds in total of the 1x1 rib. I will again just pull this close, and then I just make my next knit stitch on top of the previous knit stitch, and then I take the yarn to the front and I make a purl stitch. If this first purl stitch is a little bit loose, make sure to just drag on it to pull it a bit out, and then make your first purl stitch and knit stitch. And we are now working in a spiral basically, so you just do this until you have here 5 knit stitches on top of each other. And here we go, the 5 rounds of 1x1 ribbing. Looks pretty on both sides, of course. And now we leave the smaller hook behind, and I'm going to just grab the bigger one. And now what we are going to do is to make a full round of knit stitches, but also decreases. We are going to bring our stitch count from 84 to 72. This will also later on help to have a super stretchy and super neat looking 1x1 ribbing. And the way how to do this is we always have to think in sets of 6 stitches. Our pattern has a width of 6 stitches for each individual segment. So now what we have to do is to always take 7 stitches and then knit the first 2 together, so we have 6. I'll show you. First, we pick up the first 2 loops of the round on the hook, yarn over and pull it through. So this is now the first stitch of our 6 stitch segment. Now we make 5 more knit stitches in the next 5 stitches. And here we have the 6. And now we knit the next 2 stitches together. And since the first stitch here is a purl stitch, we are starting with the knit stitch first, and then take your finger, the loop up, and just put it over the hook, and then yarn over and pull through the loops on your hook. And like this, we keep the knit stitch in the front and shift the purl stitch to the back. Again, this was our first stitch of the 6 stitches that we need. So we make 5 more. And here now we have the next 6. And then again, 2 stitches together. Here it's easy. The knit stitch is first and then the purl stitch. So we can just knit them together. Then 5 more. And then again, the purl stitch first and then the knit stitch after that. So we grab the knit stitch first and then just take the purl stitch and put it over our hook and knit them both together. And like this we continue until the very end, and then in the end we should have 72 stitches. And here we go. We can now pull the helper yarn through. And what we can also do is to take out the helper yarn from the smaller hook size. And now we take the second color, because we will make 1 round of knit stitches just to keep the shape and the smaller stitch count. So you just put it over your hook and pull it through. And then we go stitch by stitch and make knit stitches across. We leave the first color completely behind. And right after that, we are going to start with our Fair Isle pattern, where we will add more colors. So here we are. I haven't knooked the last stitch because I want to give you a little bit more information about how these color works in knitting work. As I mentioned before, if we would now continue, it will work in a spiral around, but that also means that when we change colors, for example, when we also do stripes, there will be a jog in the design. I have a little example where you can see that. This was my first try of the hat with the heart pattern, and here you can see it clearly that the end of the round is always higher than the beginning of the round when we then continue working in a spiral. And when you have a pattern, something like this happens. Some people don't mind it. Personally, I think it's super ugly. And I did a lot of research on how to avoid that. And there are hundreds of knitting videos out there, each one claiming it's the best version or the top 5 versions. And honestly, I tried some of them and they just didn't work for me. Here I also tried some of them, resulting in something like this, even though it's still not 100% on the same height. If you're coming from crochet, there's no such thing as a slip stitch where you can balance out the lines, unfortunately. So we have to play around a little bit. If you don't mind the jog in the back, then just continue working in the spiral. If you want to try to get a jog less, then I might have a little solution. Here was a test piece to see what happens when I do things a little bit different, so I get like full straight lines. The jog is still visible, but definitely not as strong as I just showed it to you in the previous hat design. And when I made my second hat, the jog is right here. So it's not gone 100%, but I still think this looks much nicer and neater than the version with the jog. So I'm going to show you how you can do that. Again, you don't have to do it. It definitely doesn't make things easier, I can tell you already. It's definitely an additional step that we have to do, and I will do this always at the end of the round. So just in case, I mean, it's completely up to you. If you don't care about the jog in the back, and some people say when you have clothing, there is always a seam where patterns don't match 100%, then go ahead, just continue working in a spiral. If not, I will show you now how I made the jogless version, basically, because it's unfortunately not without a jog. So what I do when I make my last stitch of the round, so I pick up this loop and then I turn my work to the front to see where the bottom bump of my stitch here is, and then I go in, yarn over, pull it through, and pull it through my final loop of the round. Now I can also grab the first yarn and pull it a little bit tighter to get them both basically on the same height. It will be more visible in the future rounds, but like that, at least the jog isn't that dramatic and that big. But again, that's completely an option. Feel free to do it or not do it. This is up to you. It's just an idea from myself as a crocheter on how to avoid this stupid jog. But first, let's start with our first round of the Fair Isle pattern. I will put the design or the pattern here on the screen so you can make a screenshot if you want to. Later on, I will also, of course, put it like in one of the corners so you always see it, and then you can always also see where we are. The pattern uses 3 colors, the dark blue, the middle blue, and the white color. And as you can see, it's a 6-row repeat to create this pattern. Of course, it's not only the 6 stitches. This is why we had a multiple of 6 for the main part of our cowl. So you always have to repeat the same piece over and over again until you finalize the full round. And to start, and since the dark blue color is only used in the rounds 2 and 5, I'm going to cut it. I think this makes it easier also when carrying the yarn along, that we only attach it in those rounds where we need it, and all the other rounds we don't need it. Of course, you can keep it and then take it with you, but this will end up in long yarn floats in the back, but I will get back to the yarn floats in a bit. I will now put also my white yarn in place. The first stitch of the Fair Isle pattern is going to be a regular blue one, and then we have the first white one, and I am just going to go in the next stitch, put my white yarn over the hook and just pull it through. This is now still completely loose and unattached, so be careful to not drag on the yarn too much. And now we continue according to the pattern. We now have 4 regular blue ones, and since our very first one is a regular blue one as well, I'm going to always make 5 blue stitches and then 1 white stitch. So we grab the blue yarn again and start with the knit stitches in the blue color. Now if we do this, let's say we make the 5 blue stitches, and then we would have to grab the white again. I'm just doing it even though I will undo it in a sec. You will always get yarn strands or floating yarns in the back of your work. For some people, this is not a problem. They just accept the fact. For others, including myself, I see this a little bit more tricky, because especially when you think about we have a cowl that we put over our head, you don't want to have your nose, your ears, or whatever stuck in one of those floats. So I will show you a way how to connect or work in those floats so that they are shorter. And what I mean by that is I will just open up the last few stitches. So now I will connect the white float in the 3rd stitch of the sequence, and for that I will go in the stitch, and then I will place my white yarn over the working yarn and then interlock it like this, so it is interlocked in the back of our stitch. It's not visible in the front, and then we just continue. Now we have the 5 blue, and then for the next, which should be a white, I'm just going to grab that white yarn and pull it through. If you want to, you can always also look out a little bit on how the yarn ends are twisted. It's normal that they are twisting because you alternate the different colors. So what you can do is when you start the next stitch, instead of taking it from the top, we just take this right here from the back, so we have a free yarn strand and nothing twisted. And then again the second. For the 3rd stitch, we are now going to interlock the white, so I place it just over my working yarn and make the stitch with the working yarn. And then again the next blue and the next blue. And as you can see, it already starts twisting. So remember, take the white yarn like this and then just untwist it by grabbing the blue, and like that you have no more knots. This takes a little bit of practice, but it definitely makes things a lot easier. And I will now just finish the round. Here's another interlocking of the float, and I will meet you before we start the next round. And here we are, 1 stitch left, and now I will also show you another version of how to make a jogless join. And for that, we go in the stitch first, and then we go along the V stitch of the stitch of the loop, or the stitch underneath the top loop, exactly where our helper yarn comes out. And then you go from the side underneath the V stitch, and then you take it to the back, and usually there's one yarn strand right there, and then we yarn over and just pull it through. So this is another option to get like a pretty much jogless connection of the rounds. And like that, our first real round of the Fair Isle pattern is done. Okay, so now we continue. Our first stitch is a white stitch, so I grab the first loop and make a white stitch. The second one is a white stitch as well. And now, as you can see in the pattern, our fifth stitch is always the dark blue. So I'm going to catch the float, or I do as if I catch the float. So I'm going to just attach the float of my dark blue by putting it over my white yarn before making the next white stitch. Like that, it is in here. Again, just as we had it before, it's just stuck on. There's no knots, nothing. So be careful. Keep everything loose. Then we make the third stitch. And now again, we grab our blue color, make the first stitch, and now we grab the dark blue color, and then again the light blue, and then we can continue with white. In that case, it definitely makes sense to place the working yarns a little bit in the sequence that you're doing the pattern. So in our case, or in my case, it's first the white. So I'm going to put this first, and then we have the regular blue and then the dark blue, just to not get confused. I mean, you will anyway will need a little bit of time figuring this out. We continue with the white, then we have to catch the float of the dark blue, so I'm just going to overlap it and finish the stitch with the white. And now I'm already going to untwist it like that. And then we take the light blue. Again, it's already twisted, so the more colors you have, the trickier it gets. But like this, you can work the sequence. And I will go all around, and then I will meet you for the third round. And again, here's our last stitch. So we go in the last stitch, then go underneath that V, yarn over, and pull it through. And now we release the helper yarn as always. And then we can continue. The first stitch is a regular blue one, and then we have a white one. Oh, here I forgot to catch the float of the white, so I'm now going to leave the longer one no matter what, and I will just make the stitch. I just have to remember that now in this round I should make a catching float of the white, and I will do it exactly where I had my dark blue. So here is the regular blue, and now I will just cross the yarns to catch the white yarn float, and then make 2 stitches of the regular blue, and now I'm going to untangle it and make my final white stitch before going back to the light blue. And this is pretty much all there is. You now just continue with the pattern along. So have fun, enjoy it, take your time. It's the most crucial thing when with Fair Isle knitting, to just take your time and watch out for the pattern, of course. And I will meet you in a little bit. This might take a while. Have fun. So now I'm pretty much at the end of my cowl, so I can make the top part similar to my bottom part. Here's how it looks. I mean, I'm absolutely obsessed, and as you can see, it looks exactly like knitting, and it feels the same way. Of course, this is a chunky yarn, so overall this cowl is more appropriate for some really, really cold weather, and I hope there will be some very cold days coming still this winter. But anyway, I then have a beautiful cowl for the next winter. And I also wanted to show you, can you see any jog in here? I'm pretty surprised. I mean, here you can see it. Here's the line, but it's very minimal, much more minimal than compared to my first hat that I made with the heart pattern. And here's the inside with the floats. Of course, there are floats. You cannot make Fair Isle without any floats. Of course, if you want to invest the time to take all of these floats in and interlock them, go ahead, but I think this is still okay. You always have the option to add a lining afterwards to your piece if you don't want to have like the individual floats, but I think overall, I think this looks still okay, not too bad. And now we are going to make one final round with the light blue. So I will just go ahead, pick the light blue. If you want to, you can also incorporate the white for a few rounds in the back, just so that it is a bit more sewed in. And I will just take it with me now through every stitch, just for a few of them. One from the top, one from the bottom. And here you see that it is now a bit more incorporated. And then I'm going to cut it off. I will still leave a little bit of a yarn tail just in case. I mean, the annoying part comes in the end when we have to sew in or get rid of all the yarn ends that we have. So we make this full round of blue knit stitches all the way. And here we go. Now we can cut the light blue because we are now going to go with the dark blue to make the top part of our brim. And for that case, I will also just connect the two yarns together because this gives it a little bit more hold up here. And now we are also going to switch to the smaller hook again, just like we had it in the beginning. So we leave the 6mm behind and continue with our 5mm. And now we have to increase every 6th stitch, or how I will do it, I will increase the very first stitch and then always make sure that I have 7 loops on my hook before I then increase the next stitch. So the reverse way of how we made the beginning of this cowl. So I take the first stitch and first start with a knit stitch, and then to increase in stockinette, I'm just turning my work towards me, and then I will go in the back loop or in the back bump of the previous stitch basically, and yarn over and pull it through to then have 2 loops on my hook. And then I will make knit stitches until I have 7 stitches on my hook, 6 and 7. And this means that this one here, the next one, is going to be another increase stitch. So I'm going in there and then turn it towards me in the back bump of the previous round and pull up a second loop. And this I will continue all the way till the end. So now I have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Then the next is again an increase. So knit stitch first, go through the back bump and draw up another loop, 2, 3, 4. And when you arrive at the end, your very last stitch will be when you count 7, so you know you're correct, because now we have our original stitch count of 84 stitches. And now I can take the helper yarn out. And now I can also take my previous helper yarn out. Let's see. This was already it. Sometimes you drag on it and not the helper yarn that you expected to drag out was dragged out. But anyway, we have everything here. I'm going to put all the yarn ends in there if they are at the front. And now what we have to do is our 5 rounds of the 1x1 rib. So again, we are alternating knit stitches and then yarn to the front, pick up the loop from the side and make a purl stitch, and then yarn to the back again, knit stitch, yarn to the front, purl stitch. And again, we do this for 5 rounds. You don't have to worry about jogs anymore. Just make those 5 rounds and then I will meet you back to bind off. And once we have our 5 rounds of the 1x1 ribbing, we can now start to bind off. And first up, I'm going to pick my very first loop and just knit stitch through it, and then I will take the yarn to the front, do as if I would do a purl stitch, and then make the stitch and slip stitch through it. Then I have the next knit stitch, slip stitch, yarn to the front and slip stitch, and so on until we reach the end. And at the end, take out the helper yarn. And now we yarn over, pull it through, and then cut the yarn and pull it through. And now we take the yarn needle and just make an invisible finish. So I'm not going to go in the first stitch. This is where we will place our new, this is where we place the last stitch. I will go in the second from the front, and then I will just go in the back loop of that last chain one, and then just go in to close it so that it is pretty much invisible. And now I just take it to the back, and I will just go along the stitches and a few stitches back so that it is hidden in here, and then just cut it. This was the easy finishing part, because now of course we do have a lot of yarn ends here on the inside, because I also cut the dark blue yarn. And what we have to be careful is that those yarns are pretty much all very loose, because I didn't do any knots in between, except for the very few that I had here in the end. So whenever we have the two yarn ends here of the dark blue, for example, make sure to drag on the yarn a little bit so that the size of the V shape looks a bit the same like all the others. Here you see one, for example, that looks a bit bigger. And once we have that, I will just make a double knot, and I won't drag on it too much, just so that it is closed and that I still have a little bit of flexibility here. You can now take the yarn ends, and I will just go through some of those stitches here in the back to lock it in wherever I can find some. This is also a bit tricky, but I will just take a few stitches. Maybe I go down here. There are some stitches that are better to see or easier to see. And then I will just pull that through and then cut the yarn, leaving a little bit of tail. And this I will do for all of the yarn ends that I have. So first I'm going to check the size of the V-stitch in the front, and then go along those back bumps. And again, don't drag too much on it. Keep it a little bit nice and soft. And for the ones up here, here we already made the knot. So I can then just go along and cut them. And like this, we do it for all of the stitches inside, or for all of the yarn ends that are still inside. And once I have this, the cowl will be done. And this was the last one, I think. And that means my beautiful cowl is done. Absolutely amazing. We have a nice ribbed brim at the beginning and the end. So pretty. And again, pretty much jogless. Here's the invisible jog, basically. So I have no idea what the fuss is all about with all these hundreds of knitting videos about the jog. If you can easily get a jogless design with nooking, and I'm absolutely obsessed. This is just super pretty. And for those who are interested, who always ask me what size everything is. So let's see, the width of my cowl is around 12 inches or 31 centimeters, and the length is, including the brim, is 42 centimeters, which is around 16.5 inches. So just in case you wanted to know how big it is, and now I have my Fair Isle cowl and of course my Fair Isle hat. So awesome, and you can all do it with nooking. You can do it with just a little hook. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you had fun getting to know how to Fair Isle nooking. I definitely had such a blast making these pieces and creating the patterns for you, and of course showing you how to make them so you can make your own Fair Isle knitting nooking pieces. And if you enjoy nooking as much as I do, make sure to like this video, comment, share this video so everyone knows about it, spread the word to make nooking much bigger, and of course to motivate me to make more. And now the only thing I need would be some super cold weather so I can wear these beautiful pieces. How awesome! And of course, I hope to see you back again next time, only at the Totally Fierce Crochet and Nooking channel, with some more nooking inspirations and videos coming. Remember, if you have any ideas or patterns that you would like to see in the knooked version, tell me in the comments or send me an email so I can check them out. And until then, happy nooking! Have fun with these super beautiful pieces. Bye! So warm.